Thank you, Neil. So, good day, everyone. Coming to you with our monthly 14.2 update. And I think it's important that we present this on a pretty regular basis for a few reasons. First, we're making our way to end of life on the 14.2 software, which is scheduled to be end of life at the end of December next year. But more urgently, and the second reason, is that the SG switches, the associated hardware for 14.2, reached end of life on June 30th. And then, so third, this brings about an urgent need to have those conversations about migrations, and in support of that, there are resources that have been established, consolidated resources that we'll reiterate in a moment, but then talk about some of the enhancements that we've made to the migration resources, and then some important news about testing that Kurt Kruger will brief you on in a moment. So just to recap a bit, there are resources in place to support all 14.2 migrations at this point. And as I point you to the page in a moment, we have resources that support migration to cloud, and there are, in support of that, there are the Migration to Cloud Incentive Program that continues. But then for MiVoice Connect, 14.2 to MiVoice Connect migrations, we have content, documentation that provides step-by-step guidance for both simple and complex migrations. Simple being the majority of migration scenarios that have less than 500 users, less than 3 geographic sites, and no incremental advanced solutions. Whereas the more complex have more users, more sites, and those advanced applications. But regardless, as Mitel partners, you now have new migration guides and support resources in place to support the most complex of these migration scenarios. And as we'll talk about more in a moment, we fully tested both the simple and complex migrations. We talked last month about the migration page and those resources, and to recap for a moment, there is a brand new migration guide that is the essential guide for both simple or complex migration scenarios, and they've been tested, the scenarios have been tested completely for both simple and complex. There's a checklist that also provides that step-by-step guidance, and then to facilitate conversations, there are 2 versions of the playbooks in support of 14.2 to connect migrations. One for cloud and one for MiVoice Connect, and that will assist in the evaluation of those customer requirements and help determine that best upgrade path if the customer has not yet decided which way they want to go. And then in addition, we've pulled the Connect resources, the relevant Connect resources in on this migration page as well, which is within my access, by the way. And it includes the Connect selling guides, overviews, presentations, phone overviews, and then key integration assets as well. One thing I will note, and what's new for this month, is that we've made some improvements to the page. It's much more intuitive. There are more assets in there to facilitate the migration conversation and step-by-step migration plans. So when you go to My Access, you will see a new look and feel, as well as additional content, additional resources for you to take advantage of. And one thing I will mention is it's important that you log into My Access rather than simply clicking on the link to access this content. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kurt Kruger, who will provide some additional detail on that documentation, as well as some significant news on 1804. Kurt?
Great. Thank you, Steve. Thanks all for joining today. Wanted to start just giving you a sense of the breadth and depth of the content on that migration page that Steve was just drawing your attention to again. We start out at the top, of course, with helping you guide your customers into that decision between should they move from 14.2 to My Cloud Connect, or do they prefer to stay on-site, in which case they would be looking at a migration to MiVoice Connect. And the supporting documentation there, we've got all the great content that Steve and the product marketing team have put together. Good stuff from our technical operations group in terms of the migration playbook for cloud. We've also got some testimonials. There's lots of good content to support the cloud decision, and there's lots of good content to support the on-site decision. Similar list there from the marketing side. The technical operations team have really stepped up along with the technical account management team over in support to help us flesh out the playbooks, really improve the migration guide. This is now the core document for the process that your technical staff will go through with your customers from a planning perspective, then building a schedule, setting time frames, the full checklist of all the activities along the way. The migration guide is the documentation piece of that. For the simple scenario, as Steve said, less than 3 sites, less than 500 users, and really a voice-centric PBX kind of solution, Chapter 1 in the guide is the only thing you need to worry about. Start at the top, really get that committed into your processes, and again, our looking at the install base suggests that about 9 out of 10 across the entire population of our customers are in that simple category. There are still things to deal with Connect. We absolutely increase the security posture of the product. So there are some certificate requirements in place, and we have specifically enhanced the content around using digital certificates with the solution. I'll put a quick plug in. There was an email out for the July webinars. There's an upcoming tech talk at the end of the month specifically addressing both certificates as well as Active Directory. So I'd encourage you to register for that webinar if you'd like to increase the base of knowledge you have on those particular aspects of MiVoice Connect. There's also a number of bulletins that are accessible off that migrations page, the Resource Center as we call it, and would encourage everyone to be very familiar with all of the dates and details there. This has been a long-term project for us. We started actually prior to the acquisition as ShoreTel in January 2017, talking about the end of sale on the SG full width switches, the milestone we just passed here on June 30th. Similarly, the end of sale on the 14.2 software with the associated contact center and mobility elements, the versions that were paired there with 14.2. And just a reminder that, as Steve mentioned, 14.2 software has another 18 months of, at our discretion, a potential new release should a major issue occur with 14.2 between now and December 31st, 2019. There is one more release coming, committed for 14.2. It is a matter of us deciding which bugs exactly we're going to address, and that will be out somewhere in the next couple of months. So stay tuned for, I think it's GA30 release of 14.2. And now on the complex side, same migration guide. It's just a couple more chapters, one specifically on mobility and on contact center. Similarly, the checklist is structured for making it simple for you to understand what's required. Obviously with complex, you've got a few more things that you do have to deal with. The key message here is that now you should be very confident in migrating to Connect. And the largest reason for that, Steve touched on this as well, On Monday, we posted release 1804 of MiVoice Connect. And for the last 6 weeks or so, we have been focused extensively on the migration scenarios. We ran, memory serves, somewhere upwards of 20 different scenarios with both simple and complex configurations in our QA lab. We have made some changes in the software over release 1803. So there were a number of software enhancements, but by and large, the biggest difference here is we now have the migration guide fully aligned with release 1804 software and the added pieces, the checklist, the programs, etc. That's just on the product side. On the support side of the organization, we have similarly added additional resources. We have access to an advanced queue for those partners with technicians who are certified and can access the advanced queue through the unique PIN that's assigned to those individuals. The migration queue is there. We have resources available for you if you need assistance while you're going through migrations with your customers. So a little bit more on release 1804. A couple areas where we put some specific emphasis were on certificate management. This is less on the software side and really more on the process and when you should deal, for example, with upgrading from the old SHA-1 to SHA-256 certificates. Sorry, I won't get any more technical than that. But there are definitely a number of things we have focused on here, specifically also the ability to pre-stage the release 1804 firmware for your IP400 series phones. Remember, with the 400 series, we have the ability to hold 2 firmware images in flash on those devices. And by separating the install package for the phone firmware itself, you can, before you begin the migration, pre-stage the new firmware so that when you do make the software change from 14.2 to MiVoice Connect 1804, your phones are ready to be rebooted without having to spend that time when your technicians are actually on site. We have the download link here for 1804 and all the other prior releases. This is the same article that has been posted from the beginning. And bottom line message here, please use release 1804 for all of your 14.2 to Connect migrations. Didn't want to leave this opportunity without a quick summary. There are, for some reason, still questions in some people's minds, fomented no doubt by our competitors, about the status of MiVoice Connect in the Mitel portfolio. I want to reassure everyone that Connect will continue to be a Mitel flagship on-site product. The strategic direction is to decouple the applications from the PBX. You had a great section with Neil earlier on Office Link as the first example of how we're doing that with the CloudLink technology as the enabler. That is on the roadmap for MiVoice Connect as well. We have the resources now in place to really enhance the migration process for you from 14.2 to Connect. So subsequently, now is the perfect time to really get into those discussions with your customers and begin their upgrade planning from 14.2 to Connect. Last bit here, we've talked a lot about the Resource Center. This again is a repeat of content Steve had provided in the past, but please, if you have not already, do bookmark this link to the Connect Migration Resource Center. Again, you do need to log in and be authenticated to My Access in order to see all the resources, but please do that, take full advantage, and we look forward to you all having a very successful time migrating your customers from 14 to Connect. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott, who's got some great stuff to tell you about learning how to use the resources on our bulletins.